Thank you, Antonella and Orlando and everyone for inviting me to speak at this wonderful gathering. I am so sorry I can't be with you to hear your wonderful work and to spend time in the peerless city of Firenze. It feels a bit strange to not be talking to you about Florentine nuns since I've been talking about them for around a decade. But here I am at the beginning of a different investigation with so many available rabbit holes and vicoli ciechi that it's been difficult to isolate a single thread to spin with you today. 35 years ago, I began my doctoral research on the composer Marcantonio Ingegneri, who spent almost his entire adult life working and teaching in Cremona. It was an exciting time to be a graduate student, as it felt that between beginning and finishing my thesis, feminist musicology was opening out a whole new area of scholarly inquiry. I felt the pivot in my dissertation as I realized that Ingegneri had written madrigals celebrating female singers. But since one of them was Tarquinia Molza, I was already being sucked in by the gravitational pull of Ferrara. Since then, I have occasionally wondered about the women of Cremona. The city is kind of a halfway marker between Milan and Mantova, connected to Ferrara and Pavia by the Po River, looking north to Bergamo, Brescia, and Verona. There is paramusical evidence of thriving convent cultures in all these cities from at least the 16th century, but there is nothing similar related to Cremona. Documents from the second half of the 17th century in the archives of the Sacra Congregazione dei Vescovi e Regolari, kindly forwarded to me by the inestimable Craig Monson, contain a number of requests for outside teachers for young nuns and postulants for both playing and singing. The majority of these are from two Augustinian convents, Santa Annunziata and Santa Monica. But earlier than this, all we have are musicological whispers and shadows. At the end of the 16th century, several motets published by Ingegneri are in high equal clefs, a disposition that suggests performance by upper voices, either women or children. And his more famous pupil, Claudio Monteverdi, certainly wrote music for nuns. He mentions this in a letter to Enzo Bentivoglio. In the first half of the 17th century, Antonio Stradivarius' daughter Francesca Maria monachized at the Annunziata. Tarquinia Merula was associated with nuns in both Padova and Venice, and his two high-voiced canzonette spirituali, including the canzonette sopra la Nanna, were published during one of his several periods of employment in Cremona. But the only dedication to a Cremonese nun is from another nun. In 1609, Caterina Assandra dedicated a setting of the Vestitian antiphon Veni Sponsa Christi to a suor Silvia Assandra, perhaps her sister or her cousin, who was monachized at the convent of Santa Chiara in Cremona. It doesn't feel very promising, does it? Nevertheless, Cremonese priests who addressed nuns in their writing were concerned about their musical activities and how they might live virtuous musical lives. It may not be a coincidence that Girolamo Tromboni, the author of L'Angelo Custode, Aio della Monica, had been confessor to the nuns at Santa Monica, and his book is dedicated to Donna Anna Camilla dei Rossi, abbess of the Annunziata. Another convent following the Augustinian rule, Santa Marta, was a satellite community of the Angelic Sisters of St. Paul, whose mother house was San Paolo Converso in Milan. It was for this order that Donato Benzoni prepared Della Innodia Ecclesiastica, a 1643 vernacular translation of Anacleto Secchi's Della Ecclesiastica Innodia of 1629. Both these books contain lengthy passages on the propriety of musical performance and its manifestations of virtue. Far from condemning the women for singing and for singing well, these books create moral and spiritual space for virtuous musical engagement, while also setting boundaries against what might constitute moral peril. This reading got me thinking about how to define female virtuosity in the context of female virtue. In 1595, the 7-year-old Princess Vittoria Cibo wrote to her aunt, the musician Suor Caterina Cibo, at the Florentine convent of Le Murate. My most excellent lady mother has engaged 2 maestri for me, one for reading and the other for singing and playing. And I understand well that primarily I will be doing honor to myself, but secondly to my aunt, who desires me to become a virtuosa. At least in this girl's vocabulary, the active acquisition and deployment of musical skill is a way of improving the self and bringing honour to her family. So how do convent virtuose compare to secular virtuose? And what can we understand about how they might be similar or different? I can't answer this question fully in 25 minutes, but at least I can outline how Cremonese nuns were instructed on musical virtue and share with you a fundamental reinterpretation of something I thought I understood well. The Angelic Sisters of St. Paul were established in the 1530s, and in the first century of their existence they were inextricably bound with the Sfondrati family, one of the oldest and noblest families in Cremona and Milan. The order may have had its headquarters in Milan, but it and its male counterpart, the Clerics Regular of St. Paul, also known as the Barnabites, were founded by a Cremonese priest, Antonio Maria Zaccaria, who began his vocation at the Cremonese Duomo. Anacleto Secchi was also from Cremona. Both he and his translator Benzoni were also Barnabite priests. So I want to just skip back to the early years of the order to provide a bit of perspective on its wider influence on Cremonese convents. And note here that I will refer to Benzoni from now on, because my sense is that he amplifies Secchi, and I have not had time to check both editions rigorously. During the octave of Christmas 1565, the provost of the Clerics Regular, Gianpietro Bezzozzi, wrote to the Angelics of Santa Marta in Cremona. It seems to me that, seeing the haste of the shepherds, the devotion, the amazement, the joy, hearing from them what has happened to them, you resolve with a ready and free heart to want to banish lukewarm feelings, vain suspicions, futile fears, sloth, torpor, vileness of spirit, distrust, and transform all of them into this child, whom you have before your eyes, to whom you sing new songs and hymns, which no one but you, and like you, that is, virgins, can sing. Padre Bezzozzi writes in similar terms to the nuns of the Annunziata and to the Milanese Angelics of San Paolo. For Bezzozzi, the nun's virginity is both a necessary and sufficient condition for singing with the angels, and for nuns, therefore, singing is not just a responsibility, but a privileged duty. The notion of the Cantica Nova being exclusive to virgins was not new in the 17th century. It comes from Revelation chapter 14, verses 2 to 5. John's virgins are male virgins. Hi sunt qui cum mulieribus non sunt coinquinati. But female virgins were included by medieval writers, and in some writings discussing the performance of the liturgy, male virgins are not present at all. In the second half of the 1570s, a manual contemporaneously attributed to, but probably not by, Bezzozzi, the Pratica Spirituale d'una Serva di Dio, was published anonymously in Cremona. Endorsed by Bishop Niccolò Sfondrati and with a preface to the nuns of Cremona, it swiftly went into numerous editions with translations into French and Spanish. Written as a nun's first-person narrative, the manual is largely devoted to spiritual exercises, but it sets out an internal, imaginative, sensory, and even synesthetic world to which readers are meant to aspire. While singing the psalms, the narrator does not just concentrate on the meaning of the words, she also imagines angels and saints in dialogue and concert with her, amplifying her praise. While saying her rosary, she imagines that Christ offers his own sweet odour to eradicate the stink of human sin, and that because his ears, so used to angels singing hymns and canticles, might be filled with villainy and dishonesty, so she will lament with the angels and offers her love and mortification so that his senses are no longer offended. Note that these exercises are means of acquiring virtue through self-abnegation, rather than through external acts or demonstrations of individual skill. The Angelics in both Milan and Cremona expanded their musical practice beyond the canto fermo of the Divine Office, something that Benzoni positively advocates. He devotes an entire chapter, Il canto musicale non disdice alle inodia, to a strong denial of any notion that canto figurato does not belong in church. René Bernstein's study of the San Paolo Angelics reveals that at the end of the 16th century and beyond, Sfondrati nuns promoted polyphony, and that the convent's star singers were treated more favourably than others, much to the consternation of older nuns. The younger nuns did, however, complain that they were not allowed instruments. This corresponds with a document from Santa Marta related to the profession of a girl in the first decade of the 1600s. Her parents were concerned that she be allowed to retain her viol, as playing it would comfort her, but the abbess refused, saying that it was against the practice of the order. Angelics, then, relied on their voices. We are very used to hearing St. Paul's stricture that women should be silent in church, but the Barnabites provided a strong defense of women's obligation to sing. Benzoni says, "As for people, no one is excluded from this office of praise. Without distinction of rank or sex, all are admitted. For not only men, but also countless virgin women who love hymnody live gathered together everywhere." Admiring this, St. Ambrose exclaimed, "The women who were commanded by the apostle to remain silent in church also sing praiseworthy psalms, for it is sweet to every age and good for every sex. Young women may sing psalms without any detriment to feminine honour and without prejudice to modesty. Maidens sing hymns to God temperately with a sweet voice and musical harmony." He also mounts a defence against St. Jerome's famous distaste for women singing. St. Jerome admonishes to beware of the musical singing of women, calling it the song of demons and the deadly concert of sirens. I believe that this should be understood to mean when women sing vain words and profane songs, not when they sing psalms or other serious and devout compositions in the choir. In contrast to the Pratica, however, Benzoni does not expect nuns to focus on the words they are singing. In fact, he seems to think that the value and virtue of their singing is increased if they do not understand the words, as if knowledge would distract from the purpose and power of prayer. That which the heretics adduce against the hymns of the nuns because they do not know the Latin language is of no consequence. For even if they do, when they sing psalms, they direct their devotion and attention to God, who is adored and invoked in those hymns and prayers. As for the meaning of the words, it is sufficient, as we have pointed out elsewhere, that idiots, idioti, direct their intention towards the meaning, which is clear only to the learned. No greater intention is required of them. Indeed, idiots and ignoramuses of this sort are worth much more, and sometimes obtain more, because they pray to God with greater devotion and piety than the learned do. But where he is in agreement with the Pratica is in his regard for the right conditions of virtuous interiority, the subjugation of the self in order to be eligible to sing with the choir of angels. Benzoni maintains that music is spiritually neutral, even if it has its origins in secular songs. The danger of using secular tunes in church is that they provoke a memory of their origins in both the singers and the listeners. And if listeners are led to sin, it's not the music's fault, it's the sin in the heart of the singer. In 1625, Girolamo Tromboni published his L'Angelo Custode, Aio della Monica, the guardian angel, helper of the nun. The concept of a guardian angel gained popularity in the 16th century. The feast of the guardian angel was added to the Roman liturgy in 1615, and a confraternity dedicated to the guardian angel was established in 1617. Tromboni states that his inspiration for his book came from the erection of an altar to the guardian angel in the church of Santa Monica, but he dedicates the book to the abbess Donna Anna Camilla de' Rossi of the Annunziata. She is a member of the Rossi di San Secondo, not the Roman Rossi family. While Tromboni's manual shares themes and even specifics with Benzoni, its production is a conspicuously secular adjacent affair, with encomia for both dedicatees and author, many for the author, including ones that use anagrams of the names of Anna Camilla de' Rossi and Girolamo Tromboni. These may suggest the book was created in the context of the confraternity. 2 chapters focus on singing and music. The first, concerning the performance and purpose of the divine office, takes precedence. He underscores the primacy of the office by directly referring to musical practice. Never leave the church without first giving thanks to God for the benefits received, before whom no sweeter motet can be sung, no more worthy sacrifice offered, or no more glorious praise given than the rendering of thanks. And he stresses that angels will only participate with a right-minded choir. The second concerns musical performance and the true rules of spiritual singing. It is clear from this chapter that the nuns of the Annunziata were skilled musicians, perhaps also taking what Tromboni considered inappropriate pride in their virtuose status. I would love to just give you the entire chapter to read because its extended musical metaphors are a treat. Let the white notes of hope replace the black notes of sin, and the long notes of eternal remorse replace the short notes of worldly pleasures. But even through the mannerisms of academic discourse, we can see he echoes the Barnabites' writings. Tromboni's guardian angel addresses the nuns directly. He says, I am glad that, after learning the art of singing and playing music, you have been declared mistress of music by obedience, and that you have also begun to practice in your praises. But because in convents among the sweet consonances of voices there are often unpleasant dissonances of hearts, I have thought to warn you of some errors you make in singing, and also to dictate to you the rules that will help you to sing in harmonious consonance in the presence of God. We angels willingly and readily join with those nuns who, in holy concert, praise God in song. However, it is true that when we hear dissonance, we immediately withdraw, for we are accustomed to singing in heaven where there is always harmony. He understands vocal technique. In your music, O nun entrusted to my care, you use every possible art, I know this, to achieve steadiness of breath, clarity of voice, strength in the chest, variety in passages, affection in accents, grace in singing, and readiness and vivacity in expressing every musical emotion. You practice singing tirelessly in order to achieve those masterful manners that are so highly esteemed in the world today, paying little attention to the purpose for which music was introduced into convents, which is to praise God, to awaken devotion in those who sing, in those who feel spirit and contrition, and to awaken souls to heavenly consolations with grateful harmony. He decries time spent in rehearsal. God does not approve of you being so absorbed in music and singing that you have no time left for the profitable exercises of religion, that there is no time for you for the office or mental prayer, because you are always busy and distracted by rehearsing motets or playing songs. God does not allow this. He wants the singers to attend to the cantici novi, not to the repertoire they brought with them. If you wish to see that you are not very skilled in the art of spiritual singing, observe that there are only old songs in your lessons. While you are still entangled in the imperfections that you brought with you from the secular world, you are not very obedient to me, who have so often advised you to sing new songs with newly formed habits. He accuses them of singing flat. You are annoyingly varied in your singing, beginning the song in one tone and ending in another. Whereas if you regulated your singing in prayer to the downbeat of attention, you would begin with a loud voice praising God and end with a quiet voice of disorderly pretension of favours and graces. And then he says, finally, the beat is uneven and altered because the voice does not agree with the heart, nor the singing tongue with the working hand. 50 years after Tromboni's manual appeared, the Cremonese Theatine Paolo Botti published Il parlar a grate discorsi alla reverende monache morali e spirituali in 1688. In it, he suggests that laudate eum in timpano et coro means that if a nun does the discipline while singing, treating her body as a flesh-covered drum, her song will please God even more. This passage comes directly before a story that also appears in Benzoni that reiterates the responsibility of religious women to use their musical gifts if they have them. It comes from Lancisius, about a monk who has a beautiful voice but who will only use it on high feasts and will not sing the office with his brothers, regardless how much they entreat him. Eventually the devil appears when the monk sings, and he dances about, cackling and praising the monk's singing, the shame of which the monk lived with until death. What then constitutes a virtuous virtuosa in religious life? Summing up what we learn from Benzoni and Tromboni, Music and singing are not inherently sinful. Nuns have a specific and privileged duty to sing the liturgy, the Cantica Nova, and to sing it well. Singing well is not just a matter of possessing and using a good voice. That voice must be willingly offered to the service of God. And without attention and intention, regardless of whether the text is understood, one cannot sing well. Expanding on the work of Pamela Benson, I've written elsewhere about how female virtue in the early 16th century is meant to be passive, coming from a woman's innate qualities rather than her actions. In Il Libro del Cortigiano, Book 3, Castiglione maintains that a woman's virtues, her beauty and grace, and her musical skill are an expression of her nobility, not her agency. She needs no other adornment to her hair, her clothes, or her melodic line. Over the century, this idea changes, witness Vittoria Cibo's letter. But I would argue that nothing changes for nuns. In fact, when a 17th century woman professes, it's as if she's gone back in time. When she sings, her musical skills are no longer a function of her nobility, they are a function of her virginity and her devotion to God. Tromboni agrees. In his chapter on chastity, he says, "The virtues you acquired in secular life will cause your perdition, for you still have used the art of singing and playing music, which you should have used to praise your God, to sing profane songs, to sensually entertain the spirits, and to waste your time and that of others in vain and scandalous ways. If outward actions give a more than certain indication of what lurks in the heart, I can well say that the pretty adornment of your hair and the close-fitting clothes you wore were signs of your inner sensuality, while every act, every gesture revealed scandalous vanity in you." Before reading the Cremonese manuals, I had not appreciated that vanity, the scourge with which so many musical nuns were beaten, is not, as I had assumed, a precursor to pride, but a sin against the vow of chastity. In another manual, sadly not from Cremona, the monk story is paired with one about a young nun who has to sing the lesson, her turn coming after a sister who has an outstanding voice. She is so afraid of the sin of vanity that she resolves to sing badly and out of tune, but one of her sisters reads her mind and talks her out of it. It is so interesting to me that Tromboni, 100 years after Castiglione, also juxtaposes musical performance with physical appearance as outward manifestations of the inner self. For any woman, becoming a virtuosa had the potential of great reward and even greater peril. Cultivating oneself, whether physically, creatively, or intellectually, can lead to vanity. While the ability to sing and play well is still a virtue, deployed incorrectly, it can lead you to inner sensuality, and nobody wants that. So the whole female singer equals courtesan thing is not just about music being associated with having a really good time, it's about what music can do to your soul. A woman who is not chaste may not sing the Cantica Nova. So the virtuous virtuose of Cremona tread an even finer tightrope as they strove to sing well. Thank you very much.